Hello, in this video I'm going to try and encourage you to go and watch An Inspector Calls on stage, but if you can't, I'm going to tell you something about the stage production. So this is the National Theatre production. It's on tour. I went to see it in Oxford. And what's so useful about this is it brings home a key grade 7, 8 and 9 idea that you might not have covered properly in class. Right, one of the main ideas that would have been absolutely obvious to Priestley's audience in 1945 is that this play is an anti-war play. And that kind of gets lost in our modern translation when we focus on it being an anti-class prejudice play, a play that's against capitalism. But to Priestley, capitalism and the desire for war were really interlinked. So in this production, these characters appear who are not in our version of the play. So this is a silent chorus who have all come in Second World War gear. This person is the inspector wearing a Second World War suit, a suit from the 1940s. And the reason the director has done this is to bring out the idea that the inspector could be from the future, because he is Priestley's voice, and Priestley deliberately sets the play in 1912 because the future, 1945, is what he's really writing about. That's his present. So the premise of the play is that everything that takes place in 1912 in the Burlings house leads to World War One, and then because they don't learn the lessons of the tragedy of World War One, these same people, represented by the Burlings and the Crofts, stay in charge of society, and this awful tragedy of World War happens again as World War II. And so for Priestley, he symbolises that with the two deaths of Eva Smith, one in 1912 and the other one with the second phone call in 1912. But they represent the First World War. The first death is the First World War, and the second death, that final phone call at the end, is the Second World War. And Priestley's point is, if we don't learn the inspector's lessons, then World War will keep repeating. So his message is that capitalism leads inevitably to World War. Now, one of the ways that the theatre production stages this is incredible. I'll show you it here, which might be easier. This is the inspector, and here are characters inside the Burlings dining room where they're having their celebrations. And so this house is actually quite tiny on stage. It's almost like a doll's house. All the characters fit in it, and they come out into the real world where the inspector is. The inspector doesn't venture inside the house. He forces them to come out and face the external reality. And that's the way the director gets across the idea that the inspector is teaching a message about the real world. And he also shows that class privilege has led them to lead a sort of fantasy life in which the normal rules of society don't apply. And it's a really interesting way to stage this. Now, if you go back to the opening stage directions, Priestley is really keen that productions don't actually stage this in a realistic way. He wants the audience to experience everything as symbolic. Now, the advantage of having loads of characters on stage when the inspector disappears who have come from the Second World War is that the director can make really clear that this is a play about the future, and Priestley is trying to change the future of the audience who have lived through the Second World War by giving them an experience which is totally different. What sort of experience is it? It is a socialist experience to improve the lives of the ordinary men and women and children who were alive in 1945. Now, I was really impressed with this production. I advise you to go and see it. It's an absolutely fantastic night of theatre. Even my wife absolutely loved it. And when she saw that it was An Inspector Calls, her heart sank and thought, oh God, I'm not going to go and watch a GCSE play, am I? But it was brilliant. And the other thing about it that you will really enjoy is that it's very different from what you read on the page. The director does take a few liberties with the script, but that actually helps you get to know the play much better. And you also ask, why is the director taking these liberties? And that will really clarify a lot of ideas for you. And it's a lot funnier than it appears on the page. There are lots of really good jokes. And added to that, it's also a lot angrier. I've never seen it produced with Sheila and Eric looking quite so angry. So a brilliant experience. Go and see it if you can. I'm sure it's going round the country. And it's a play that you'll remember for the rest of your life, never mind the fact that you're watching it at GCSE.